Welcome to the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Bigelow, the men's basketball beat writer for Varsity, and joining me as always is my co-host, Jacob Bigelow, contributor to Huskers Illustrated. Biggs, how you doing?
Doing all right, man. It is entirely too damn cold, and I did not dress for it being entirely too damn cold. But here we are, fresh. I'm fresh from the office, still dressed in my office clothes, but here to talk recent happenings in some hoops with you. So I'm happy to be here.
Unfortunately, we've got some bad news to lead off the show with today, as we record this on Thursday evening. Met with Fred Hoiberg to preview their trip to Purdue, and Juwan Gary, who left the game with about 2 minutes to go in the first half against Illinois, will not play. Suffered a shoulder injury. It's the shoulder that had given him problems that he's had a wrap on, kind of the compression thing on all season. Left the Omaha game, second game of the season, early and didn't return. Hasn't really bothered him yet in terms of impacting his ability to play since then, but on a free throw miss, kind of went up, get the rebound, got it yanked down as Coleman Hawkins slapped the rebound out for Illinois and went down in immediate pain. The officials stopped the game. You can see he was down for a while before eventually getting up and heading straight back to the locker room. So Hoiberg said that he's still feeling a lot of pain. There's a lot of swelling today. He is day to day. They know he's missing this Purdue game, and then beyond that, could be multiple games. He could be back. They just don't know how many games he's going to miss at this point, but they know he will be absent for the Purdue game, which leaves a big hole in Nebraska's lineup that was already a little short on talent. So now you're missing one of your most impactful players. That's the problem. And either Wilhelm Breidenbach or Denham Dawson will start in his place. Dawson started for him in the second half of the Illinois game after Breidenbach picked up 3 fouls in 4 minutes in the first half. And then Wilhelm came in and scored 11 straight Nebraska points during an 11-3 run, I believe. Personal 11-3 run there in the second half to get Nebraska kind of back into that game. So just quick on there on the Breidenbach, he has, over his last 6 games, he's averaged almost 8 points a game, shooting 53% from the field. He's 5 of 13 from 3 during that stretch, hit 6 of his 7 free throws, and grabbing 4.2 rebounds per game in just under 16 minutes a game. So this last 6-game stretch, he's been in double figures 3 out of those 6 games after doing so once in his first 21 games as a Husker. So this is a big loss, but the one bright side is Breidenbach maybe figuring things out a little bit. At least have been playing better recently. So that's me talking a lot right off top here. I'll just kind of let you go with your reaction to Juwan Gary not being able to play against Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a big loss on both ends of the court. He's definitely one of the 2 defensive anchors. You'd have to assume. I mean, we saw it the first time they faced Purdue. He was one of the guys usually coming in to double team Edey, and assuming they're going to have a similar game plan with defending him. That's one of the guys would have been playing a pretty important part on the defensive end. Obviously, offense with him can be hit or miss, can be some eyebrow-raising decisions at times. But the biggest thing that they're going to miss from him offensively is those energy plays. Those putbacks, those offensive rebounds, the junkyard dog mentality stuff that we talked about for what it feels like for a bunch of shows in a row. That's definitely what they're going to miss the most from him offensively, and especially on defense going up against a team like Purdue. You need all hands on deck for going into the Hornets' nest that is Mackey Arena, and for them to be down a man when they need every man they can. It's definitely a tough break for this group.
Yeah, and Gary, again, like you said, hit or miss on offense, but most of the players on this team are missing more than they hit. And so he's a guy that was at least hitting somewhat more often than some of the other guys, averaging 9.5 points, 6.5 boards, 1.5 steals, and just under 30 minutes a game. So So a lot of playing time, a lot of production that they're going to have to replace. Dawson is like physically, from a body type, from a skill set standpoint, he's kind of the most similar player on the roster to Gary, but he's a redshirt freshman who's scored 19 total points this season, and 8 of those were in the Omaha game. So he has seen his minutes uptick the last 3 games. He's played 10, 15, and 16 minutes in the last 3 games. Hoiberg praised what he did against Michigan State, like what he saw from him. Wants him to just kind of continue being him, but they do need more production out of that spot than what he's given them in his role to this point. So if he's going to be out there playing more extended minutes, got to find a way to. I mean, even that Illinois game, he got in there, got a great offensive rebound, put up the little 3-foot bunny, just caught the back of the rim and propped right back out. Like, those are the plays you got to have. You got to have buckets in those situations. So that's going to be something to watch with him. Kind of what does it look like with his expanded role? I know they've been bouncing back and forth between Jamarcus Lawrence and Denham Dawson as kind of that first freshman off the bench. It seemed like it's shifted back and forth between those two, but now they're both going to get a chance to play most likely moving forward, and they're going to have somebody step up. So yeah, we can briefly preview Purdue at the end because we've already seen them once this year. I think people are very aware of what they provide at this point, but
could maybe touch on Ohio State too if we want. Yeah, look at those guys since their next game up next week on Wednesday. But first, we got something to look back. We got 2 games to look back on. We'll start with the positives. I am now 2 for 2 on declaring must-win games, and Nebraska winning games that I declare must win. They went to Minnesota last weekend, and they got a win in overtime, 81-79 at the barn. A sneaky, tricky little backdoor cover for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. For those of you who have those interests, that was a tough beat.
Oh,
but could not imagine that. But big win. You know, it as big of a win in January can be. We said they needed to win this game, and I just definitely felt like a game that past Hoiberg teams would have found a way to roll over and not, they get punched in the mouth by Dawson Garcia and Jamison Battle. They might have just rolled over, but this team battled back and they got it done in overtime.
We saw them lose this game against North Carolina State last year, where had a chance to win it in regulation, gave it up, and couldn't make the plays to win it in the multiple overtimes. Only one overtime, but that's because they didn't make the plays this time. It's a wild game, and like you said, must-win game. We're firmly in any win's a good win in the Big Ten. But that being said, this wasn't an encouraging win with how it played out, I thought, especially with what followed. We talked about how bad Minnesota was on both ends of the court. And yeah, the 81 looks nice at the end. 14 of those points were in overtime. And I figured I'd just squeeze this in now just to mention. So 67 points in regulation. They followed that up with 50 points against Illinois. And we talked about where they are offensively. And so these are the point totals for Nebraska's regulation point totals for Nebraska's last 8 games against high major teams. 63 against Creighton, 65 at Indiana, 56 against Purdue, plus 6 in overtime, 56 against Kansas State and Kansas City, 66 against Iowa, 56 at Michigan State, 67 against Minnesota, and 50 against Illinois. So they won some of those games, credit to them, but when that's the most you can muster, when you can't even approach 70 points in a regulation game against a Big Ten team or against a high major team, obviously Kansas State, Creighton in there as well, your margin for error is just so incredibly small. And we saw that against Minnesota. It's a team they should have been able to pull away from to create separation. They shouldn't have needed overtime to win this game, even on the road. But they did. So they got the win, credit to them, but there's still some questions. This game itself, it was a wild game. The runs in this game. Yep. I'm just going to read off some of the runs. So 10-2 run for Minnesota to take a 22-15 lead. Nebraska used a 16-4 run to pull ahead. Minnesota countered with an 11-0 run and led by 6 at halftime. They pushed the lead to 7 early in the second half, and then Nebraska hit them with a 16-2 run to take a 54-47 lead. Then Minnesota shot right back with a 14-4 run to take a 61-58 lead. And then Sam Griesel hit the pull-up three, which was a huge shot. To tie the game was just under 6.5 to play. And Derek Walker followed it up with back-to-back buckets for a 7-0 run to put Nebraska up 4 with just under 4 minutes to play. So just some wild runs in the game. Like neither team was able to firmly grab control, because every time one side did, the other answered right back with a run of their own. And so it went back and forth the entire time. Nebraska should have won this game in regulation, but just some defensive mistakes down the stretch. So I talked about that 7-0 run to take the lead. 3 empty possessions followed before that, or after that, until Jameson Battle got free for a 3. And this is just the mistakes, the bad execution, like that on that possession. Derek Walker was in help, but not actively doubling. But CJ Wilcher and the ball handler wasn't quite threatening yet. And CJ Wilcher, for some reason, dropped to help the helper, despite Walker not actually going to double. And easy skip pass to Wilcher's man, Juwan Gary, left Jameson Battle to slide over to pick up his man, who was Samuels at that point. Made the extra point. Jameson Battle wide the heck open, top of the key. Gave up a 3. So again, that's just a mental mistake. Like, guys not on the same page. Either double hard and be aggressive there, or stay home. There was no reason for CJ to help off the way he did. But it put him in rotation right away, and now instead of feeling great, you give up a 3 with about 2 minutes to play, and now you're in a battle. Derek, we talk about what Juwan Gary brings. They playing through Derek Walker, who we'll touch on in a minute here. Phenomenal game, but got him the ball, drove just a little bit off on the shot, and Juwan Gary flies in out of nowhere for a tip slam with about a minute to play to put Nebraska back up by 3. Huge play right there. And Walker actually stopped Dawson Garcia on defense, forced up a bad shot, got the rebound. They went down. Unfortunately, they called the offensive foul on Walker trying to drive against Garcia to turn it back over. And then that was a interesting call and an important call, because same play happened in regulation and they called it the other way. That gave them the ball back with 23.6 on the clock. Got into the front court, and Ben Johnson called a timeout to draw something up from the sideline. 20 seconds left to play. So Nebraska was in switch everything right away. They got the ball in, and right away, Derek Walker switched with, I forgot, either Bandamel or Gary, and Walker ended up on Talon Cooper. And so you had Bandamel and Gary, your 2 best defenders, involved on Dawson Garcia and Jameson Battle, their 2 best offensive players. They tried to run a couple pick and rolls at top of the key, but Bandamel gets over, and then they switch. Again, 2 interchangeable pieces up top, your 2 best defenders, getting nothing out of the pick and rolls that they called. Mm-hmm. They give up the ball, swing it to Talon Cooper in the corner, who immediately rips and drives baseline past Walker. Again, mismatch, center on a point guard, blows by. And remember, this is a 3-point game with under 20 seconds to play. Like, this is later in the clock now. They've chewed up some time going north those pick and rolls. And for some reason, CJ Wilcher helped all the way over to the far side of the lane, to the ball side, from the backside shooter, from a corner shooter in the backside corner. And Cooper, and that means Sam Griesel has to drop and play 2 men, tries to play in between there. Cooper makes a skip pass to Griesel's man, who I forgot who it was. I don't think it was a very good shooter, though. I think Griesel probably should have stayed in the corner, but Griesel just kind of instinct rotates over to the shooter, who makes the extra pass to the corner for Samuels, wide open three, tie ball game. So again, that's just mental mistakes that can't happen for a team with such a small margin for error. You've got to be locked in. There's just absolutely no reason in that situation for CJ Wilcher to be helping the way he did. But he did. He gave up a three, and then ball goes through timeout with 4.8 to go. They got inbound on the baseline, get it in, swing it over to Griso, who punches it ahead. Pulls up for a logo three with 2.5 on the clock with CJ Wilcher wide open in the corner. Like, they just didn't guard him.
And Keisei Tominaga wide open on the other side of the court. That's who I thought the play was originally for.
I think it probably would have been tough to get Keisei the ball from where Sam was, but like, this is right ahead. Strong side corner, Sam where he was. Mm-hmm. I think Sam just lost track of the time. Like, he didn't realize he had enough time to make a pass and still get a shot off, but pulled up from a deep three that didn't have a shot. So overtime. Again, just situational basketball. They weren't able to quite execute a chance to win this game. Minnesota scored first, and then Nebraska went through Walker again and scored 5 straight. Nice little bucket inside with a hook shot, then assisted Emmanuel Bandamel for a go-ahead layup, and then stopped Garcia and got fouled on the rebound and split the free throws. So Nebraska's back up by 3, 72-69 with just under 2 minutes to play. And Juwan Gary fouled Garcia on the rebound, though. Again, just a mental mistake. Like, at that point, Walker missed the second free throw, and Gary's kind of locked on into his back. Garcia goes up for the rebound. They call the foul. You got to know in that situation, I don't have it. Back off. You cannot commit a foul because now you're walking down the other court. 1 second comes off the clock, and they're at the free throw line shooting 2. So there you go from up 3 there to up 1. They go back to Walker, and this time he gets the blocking foul on Garcia on the same drive, kind of catch, rip, go. Garcia tried to slide over. Like, the first one, it was much more of a bang, like, play. This one is just complete total Garcia throwing his hip into Walker trying to draw the foul.
Absolutely.
They did not fall for it, and it was Walker's 5th with 1:37 to play. And this time Walker hit both to put Nebraska up 3. So here you are. You're in control here. And again, another defensive miscue, just a miscommunication. They run a pick and roll with Garcia and Battle, I believe. And
Garcia just fouled out, so it was.
Correct. Yeah, that was early on. But yeah, whoever Walker was guarding there went up to set a screen, and they kind of switch, but don't really. Walker never ends up coming out. So Battle picks up the ball, kind of looks and realizes nobody's coming to me, and just reloads, fires, and shoots the ball. It looked like Gary was going to switch. Walker never came out, so then Gary let the roll man go and then tried to step back to Battle, but at that point he had already shot the ball. So this miscommunication, guys not on the same page. Gary's got to get over the top, or Walker's got to show, one or the other, and they didn't do that. So gave up a 3, tie ball game again. You just earned that lead, and you gave it right back with a mistake on defense. They got the ball to Derek Walker again, drove. And again, he missed, but Juwan Gary there again for the tip-in. Almost the exact same play as late in regulation to put them up 2. And after that Battle, bad pass, trying to hit the roll man and pick and roll. CJ was there for the steal. And then they hit free throws down the stretch. Actually, after Sam Griso hit 2 free throws, they kind of ran the other pick and roll again, hoping that Nebraska would go under. And this time, Gary was on the screen setter. He stepped to him and forced an air ball. So there you go. One possession, to the next possession, they fixed their mistake. 2 possessions later, addressed it and got the stop. And that basically sealed the game because went down. Griso hit 2 more free throws, which that's been a struggle for him this year and for this team as a whole. So credit to Nebraska for hitting their free throws in overtime. I believe they were 16 for 21 in the game as a whole. And that is what Nebraska needs to win that game. Minnesota hit 2 shots in the last 5 seconds, including a 3 at the buzzer to make it a 2-point game. And like you said, cover up that spread. But Nebraska escaped there with a win despite making so many mistakes down the stretch. So yeah, that's kind of the game story, and just so all the little things that I saw watching back, like things that you can't do if you want to be a good team that they just did. Too many mistakes.
Yeah, and if you can overcome those mistakes, especially on the road, I know it was probably a sleepier road environment than most of the road games they'll play. Weird 11 a.m. Saturday start time, no students there, but still found a way to escape the barn with a win. But what came next? Another part in a disturbing trend, which has followed some of Nebraska's biggest wins this season, not biggest, some of their wins recently, which is, there's no other way to put it, a complete and total dud against Illinois on Tuesday night in Lincoln. There was kind of some anticipation coming into this game, an opportunity to, defend your home court, take down one of the teams that was expected to be one of the better teams in the conference coming into the season. The Illinois did get off the schneid just before this game. They beat Wisconsin in Madison, and then came to Lincoln to take on the Huskers. And to put it simply, Illinois has themselves a dude, and that dude is named Terrence Shannon Jr.
So, but before we get to that Illinois game, because I want to, the contrast from one to the next isn't, I think, important to point out.
Okay.
Before we move on from that Minnesota game, I want to highlight the game Derek Walker had.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that does need to be addressed.
Finished with 22 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Although I was talking to you before it started, I was watching back the film, and they gave him an assist on a play where he passed to Juwan Gary, who then dribbled 3 times and pulled up for an elbow jumper. And they decided to give him an assist for that. That is not an assist. So the assist total a little words just escape me. A little inflated there, but still just a really impressive all-around game. And even shot 9 of 17, but again, some of those misses later in the game led to the Gary putback. So he still created something there, and Nebraska got points on the play. And they did a really good job of getting him in spots where he could go to work. And Minnesota, I said, not a good defensive team. They gave Walker and Griesel a lot of space to work with. And I just I took notes on all his buckets. Just a lot of it was baseline, little short corner catch and going to work on an isolated side. Nobody helped. Catch at the free throw line, drive, put on the deck. There weren't guys digging in to making life difficult. There was a few spin moves in there again where there weren't guys digging in and helping. So they just Minnesota kind of let Nebraska do what it wanted to do quite easily, and it led to 22 points for Walker and 18 for Gary with some of those putbacks and hit a 3 early, and then 17 for Griesel. 17 points, 5 assists, no turnovers for Sam Griesel. So that's I kind of described in my column after my Wednesday Pat in the Stats column after the Illinois loss that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
This game was kind of fool's gold a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of the regulation point total is 67 points, and then the way Minnesota defended, which they just didn't really. And we saw that really show up when you compare it to the Illinois game, where Illinois, they were not going to let Nebraska do whatever they wanted, and Derek Walker followed up a phenomenal game against Minnesota with 5 points on 2 of 7 shooting, 3 assists, and 3 turnovers, and that's how you get to 50 points for this Nebraska team, which tied the season low from the St. John's game when Walker wasn't even playing.
Yeah, not great. I kind of feel like, he didn't score his first points until the second half, didn't he? Because he sat so much in the first half. It was like the 12-minute mark,
2,
like 12 minutes. Yeah, it was like 12 minutes to go in the second half. And, Nebraska came out of the locker room on that quick 6-0 run in the second half, and they tried to make it interesting. Walker finally gets his first points. It's like, okay, what are they going to do now? And then just the bottom fell out in the worst way possible for the last 7 minutes. And Illinois, they wound up winning 76-50, a 26-point home loss, in a game that had, like I said earlier, had some anticipation, coming into it. And, Nebraska just didn't have the horses like Illinois, man. I mean, it was a dud. It was a dud, but when one team has Terrence Shannon and the other team doesn't, it's going to be tough to keep up.
To illustrate that first point about not having the horses, there was a point there late in that half where Nebraska rolled out a lineup of Sam Griesel, Keisei Tominaga, Jamarcus Lawrence, CJ Wilcher, and Denham Dawson. Like, that's a 5-man unit that I did not anticipate ever seeing this season. But
yes,
between the Juwan Gary injury, the foul trouble to both Emmanuel Bandamel and Derek Walker, who picked up 2 apiece in the first half. Bandamel only played 10 minutes. Walker only played 6. Didn't leave him with a lot of options. So, yeah, that's kind of illustrating that point. And then for Shannon, like you mentioned, he had 17 in the first half, finished with 25 points, 11 rebounds.
Yep, 25 and 11.
Yeah, 4 assists, I believe. And 4 steals, I think. And I went through and tracked all of his points. The interesting kind of storyline going is Manu Banamel is the player that spoke with us and talked about like how good of a player Shannon was and how he's excited for the matchup to see kind of where he stood, where he stacked up as a defender against as good of a two-way player as they've seen this season, is what he called it. And obviously the foul trouble played a part in that, but Manu was not on Shannon very much. Of those 25 points, he basically scored on everybody on the team, like matching up. Against Sam Griesel, he was 2 for 4 and drew a foul and hit a free throw. So 5 of those points came on Griesel's defense. Against CJ Wilcher, 2 for 2 and missed an and 1 free throw. So 4 those were on Wilcher. Denham Dawson, 2 for 2, made both his layups against him, 4 points there. Juwan Gary hit a 3 when Gary didn't. This was the play late in the half. Like Nebraska, despite the foul trouble, and they were hanging around early. They were down 25-20. And then there's a play where they've got the ball on the left side. Gary and Shannon are hanging out weak side. Sam Griesel switched, I think it was pick and roll. Sam Griesel contained the ball handler. I think Wilcher and Keisei were both in the lane, weak side there to provide help. And for some reason, Gary also dropped into the lane to provide help on a play where Griesel had the ball handler contained. And Shannon sees that and goes from the left wing, runs all the way over to the right, easy step in, catch and shoot 3. And that sparked a 9-3 end of the half. Now suddenly, instead of down 5, you're down 11 going at halftime and feeling bad about yourself and bad into the half and all that type of stuff. So remember all those mental mistakes, those situational things that I pointed out in the Minnesota game popping up again. As improved as Nebraska is defensively, they're not elite. They're not good enough to win. They're not one of the best defenses in the country. They're a top 50 defense in the country. Yeah. They're not a top 10 defense, the kind that can win strictly on their defense and getting up to 60 points. You feel like you got a chance to win. They're not there at this point. They can't play 40 minutes of elite defensive basketball based on their personnel and then, again, some of the mental mistakes. But anyway, that's the bucket that Gary gave up on him. Bandamel got scored on once and fouled him once and hit 2 free throws. So 4 of the 25, only 4 of the 25 came on Bandamel. The one guy that he tried to score on and couldn't, Wilhelm Breinbach on a pick and roll switch there. Shannon settled for a step back 3, missed it. And then the other 5 points came when it's just Nebraska in rotation. It wasn't necessarily one-on-one. It's miscommunications on a pick and roll coverage where nobody really picks them up. But 2 for 6, including 1 of 5 from 3. So honestly, Nebraska was better off leaving Shannon unguarded than guarding him because he scored at a much higher rate. Because when somebody was on him, he just blew by them, went straight to the rim. Nebraska didn't have anybody that can stay in front of him. That's where most of his buckets were, and that's where he talked about a dude. Kind of guy that can take advantage of Nebraska's specific weaknesses defensively, because Griesel, Wilcher, not necessarily the fleetest of foot. Dawson Vandemel, that you think like those are 2 of your defense-focused players, blew by those guys, made them look slow as well. So that's kind of how you get to 25 points, where he just scored on any and everybody. And Nebraska didn't really have an answer for him, and they didn't have someone that could go shot for shot with him on the other end, especially with the way that Dane Danger defended Derek Walker. None of his tricks worked in this game. Again, finished 5 points on 2 of 7 shooting, and Danger he's a huge dude, 270, 6'10", whatever. Not the quickest not the quickest footed guy, but he was there every time. Didn't fall for Walker's fakes. Didn't give him the angles. Blocked them a couple of times.
Yeah, he did. Brad Underwood said this in the post game. He didn't fall for one fake. He stayed down, stood his ground. I mean, he's built like a brick, house. He's 270 pounds, and we'd seen Derek go straight at 7'4" guys. We could kind of try and go, under and up. But, I mean, Danger wasn't letting him go over him. That's for damn sure. And he just, he kind of, I don't want to say he bullied him defensively, but it was pretty close to him bullying Derek.
Yeah. And talked about the foul trouble that definitely impacted the game in the first half. There were 24 total fouls and 19 total field goals in the first half.
Yep.
And part of it, there was definitely some touch fouls. Like, why are you calling that? But I know Fred Hoiberg said today that that Nebraska sent in tape of his second foul call to the Big Ten office because they weren't happy about it. I believe it was a moving screen where the defender, I think, flopped. Like Derek's just kind of running down the court and really wasn't a whole lot of contact or anything. And they called the offensive foul. I believe that was the second one. And I think that's what Fred's talking about, if I can remember it clearly. But yeah, it's just a really choppy game in the first half. But there was a lot of dumb fouls too. So like, we can't put this all on the officials. There were a lot of plays where, especially after the officials established what kind of game it was going to be, Nebraska still kept making the same mistakes. So like, you've got to be able to adjust to the officiating and not get some of those dumb fouls, so that when they do get call bad ones on you, they're not as impactful because you haven't given away 3 or 4 other fouls that were definite, legitimate fouls that didn't need to happen. So Brian Bach in particular is going to have to get better at that now if he's going to need to play an expanded role. But talked about it. They gave up that run at the end of the half, went into the locker room down 11, came out right away, got Derek Walker back out there, immediately hit CJ Wilcher with a dime for a reverse layup, then fed Mano Bandamel for a dunk, which was his first shot attempt of the game. But again, he only played 10 minutes in the first half, didn't take a shot. And then next time down, they got the ball to CJ Wilcher, who drove baseline, and really nice reverse finish, good English off the glass. So just like that, 6-0 run out of the gates to make it a 5-point game. Force a timeout less than 2 minutes into the half. They Illinois, whatever Brad Underwood said in the halftime or the timeout, worked, because they responded with a 21-6 run to push that lead out to 20. So 55-35, you're like, all right, we're done here. Credit to Wilhelm Breinbach, who was absolutely not done there. I mentioned before, came in, made a nice run. 11-3 personal run, pick and pop 3 from Jamarcus Lawrence, and that's big. You got to have him hitting shots, and again, he's hit 5 threes in the last 6 games, shooting the ball better. There was one, even I think Fred said that he missed his first one and then turned the second one down that Fred wants him to shoot, like still has confidence in him. So pick and pop three. Next time, pump fake, the defender bit and jumped out on him, and he used that advantage to put the ball on the deck. It was Coleman Hawkins. Put the ball on the deck and finish the lefty finish and one at the bucket. This time he had Dane Danger on him and pump faked again. Danger jumped at him and he put the ball on the deck and attacked for little kind of running push shot over the help defender. So that's personal 8-0 run there to give him the huge spark. Got a friendly roll on that shot, but credit to him, he put it where it needed to go. Then Matthew Meyer hit some free throws. So it was 11-2. That's right. So Matthew Meyer got fouled, hit some free throws, and then kind of a couple misses back and forth. Then Brian Bach really feeling it. They get the ball inbound to him, catch it on the wing. Guy runs through, faces up his man, just goes up and shoots it. The hand in the face, buried it. So that's 11-2 run, 57-46. Now it's a game. Again, like when you dig yourself that much of a hole, you create zero margin for error. So like they need to continue to make every play down the stretch to give themselves a chance. But they gave themselves again. They did the work they needed to in that stretch. Because Derek Walker followed up, I think it was Griso in transition for a putback and one to make it 59-49 with 6 minutes and 22 seconds left. That was Nebraska's last bucket of the game.
Yep.
Illinois closed the game on a 17-1 run. And these are their offensive possessions at that point until they subbed in the walk-ons and the bench guys. A late clock desperation three from Jamarcus Lawrence when they didn't generate anything. A bad pass turnover. Sam Griesel splitting a pair of free throws for their only point. The CJ Wilcher got the putback off of the missed free throw and missed it in the trees because we know he'll never pass it back out. Then Sam Griesel, like feeling like somebody's got to make a play, took a handoff, just rose up and took a three, missed it. Kind of, again, some of the early Wilhelm stuff we saw where head down, kind of force it up, the little 12-foot like spinning jump hook did not go. And Emmanuel Bandamel tried to run a handoff, turn the ball over. Keisei Tominaga pull-up jumper, miss. Then Emmanuel Bandamel just straight up lost the ball trying to handle it for a turnover. And so that's 5 minutes of that. That's their every offensive possession for 5 minutes there. Then they subbed out their starters at the minute 2 to play. So that's how they ended the game there. Again, just guys got to be able to make plays, and they did it. And so the spirited effort to get that thing down to 10, but could not sustain it. And that's how you get a 26-point loss.
Yeah. I mean, that was, that escalated quick. It just got ugly really quickly in that second half. I feel like almost every Illinois make, there was an extra pass or sometimes even like 2 extra passes. I did not realize that both Meyer and Melendez only made 2 threes. It felt like they made more than that each until I looked at the box score again. I'm like, wow, they really both only made 2 each. That's
the thing. Like Illinois only shot 28% from 3. They were 8 of 29. And I said going into the game, like, this is a team that attempts their top 25 team in the country in terms of 3-point rate. They take a ton of threes. They were exactly average. Like they were shooting right at the national average from 3 going into the game. So it's not a great 3-point shooting team. It's just a team that takes a lot of them. Yeah. So like for Nebraska to have a chance, they needed Illinois to have a rough shooting game on the road because you knew the attempts were going to go up regardless. And that's kind of the way the game started. They missed their first, was it 5 or first 2 possessions they were threes and didn't get either one to go. It's like, okay, here we go. So from that standpoint,
8 for 29. I mean, 8 for 29. I mean, Hawkins 1 for 5, Meyer 2 for 8. Shannon 2 for 7, Sincere Harris 0 for 2, Melendez 2 for 6. Like that's shooting numbers that we've seen teams, come into PBA, and I mean that's kind of been the Nebraska recipe is allow threes and hope they don't go in. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. But and even when Illinois wasn't hitting threes, they still, like we talked about earlier with Shannon. I mean, he was getting to the rim with ease. I mean, he was making it look easy.
Yeah, Nebraska only won the paint points battle by 2, and Shannon was responsible for most of 30s. Illinois' 30 paint points. It felt like Danger only had 4. Hawkins had 12, but they also got outscored by 6 at the free throw line. And Illinois had a bad shooting game, but Nebraska's a bad shooting team. They were only 4-14 from 3. So even though Illinois shot poorly, they still doubled them up in 3-point makes. And the math just isn't going to work out in your favor if you also lose the free throw battle. They were 6 of 11 from the line, and Illinois was 12 for 18. So again, they shot poorly, but they made more than Nebraska did. And 17 turnovers was a huge part of it. And offensive rebounds was a huge part of it. Illinois had 13 offensive rebounds for 17 second chance points and turned Nebraska's 17 turnovers into 16 points the other way. And that's what Hoiberg said after the game. Like the 2 points of emphasis going in, the basics of the game plan were take care of the ball and crash the defensive glass and don't give them second chance opportunities. And Nebraska didn't do either one of those. And like, that's, again, we go back to the mistakes, all that type of stuff. Like when you have this small margin for error, you have to be locked in. And how many times did Hoiberg talked about how physical Illinois was, getting over screens, always on your hip, all that type of stuff. How many times did they just throw a pass across the way for a pick 6, or try to make a dribble handoff where the defender's there and took it away from them? Like, that stuff you can't get away with when teams are as physical. And Nebraska tried to do what they normally do, without recognizing what the defense was doing. And that's where a lot of those problems came from.
And the deeper you get into conference play, the more games you have on film, the more better you're going to be scouted by these conference opponents, especially teams where you're going to be playing them for a second time, like Purdue on Friday. I mean, Matt Painter's a mad scientist. I'm sure he took that first game in Lincoln and has broken it down to a science. And it's going to feel like death by 1,000 paper cuts going into Mackey Arena, because when in a conference like the Big Ten, where everybody knows everybody knows your schemes, your go-tos and everything, that's a problem for Nebraska, because right now they're predictable. They're predictable on offense, and it's easy to prepare for when there isn't really, like I said, a dude. Yeah. They don't have a dude, like, plain and simple.
Yeah, I talked about how Greasel and Walker had so much space to work against Minnesota, and they did not against Illinois. Greasel, 12 points, but only 2 assists and 4 turnovers, because they were sitting on that spin move in the lane. They were sliding bodies over. They were leaving guys on the perimeter to not give him the driving lanes, the opportunities to isolate on one part of the floor where he could go to work. His best buckets were off the ball, getting downhill off of a little curl to the rim, cutting off of Walker. There's still some good tape in there of them using him, but when they can't get the ball to the high post, or nobody else is able to create off the dribble, then that forces Greasel to try to do too much. And if he has to work really hard to get to his spots, then it makes it harder to have enough energy left to finish once he gets there. And so that's kind of your Greasel is one, and then Walker's the other. And again, the foul trouble played a part of it, but only 7 shots, 2 of 7 shooting, 3 assists and 3 turnovers. Only 2 turnovers. One of them, they looking at the box score and the rewatch, they assigned one of Breidenbach's turnovers to Walker for some reason. But again,
stats.
There just wasn't room to work for the spin moves, for the kind of the way they like to work in the paint. And that's not going to get any easier until guys start hitting threes. And opponents do a great job of not giving Tominaga in particular space, of giving CJ Wilcher in particular space. They're helping off everybody else. And if they're helping off those guys, they've got somebody rotating, or they know that the pass isn't going up at that point. So you're seeing here where in this game, Tominaga, he gave him 6 points all in the first half, all inside the arc. Couple cuts to the basket, and then little transition, like stop and finish off the glass. 0 of 1 from 3. Wilcher, 0 of 1 from 3. The two guys that you need to hit threes got to combine 2 threes off, because they're not the quickest of foot, and defenses know, like, we can't give these guys space. We take these guys airspace away, then they're going to have a tough time scoring. So that's the challenge that Nebraska now finds before it is Hoiberg and his crew have to find a way to generate offense, knowing that every other Big Ten team on their schedule has the tape now. They know what they do well. You go back and watch, there's some really good stretches, again, playing through the high post, cutters, getting Greasel downhill, getting Walker isolated on the side. That's just stuff that is hard to do to live with, though, if you don't have a counter, because defenses can start to really hone in on that and make it tough to get to those spaces on the floor. And we saw that against Michigan State, who really cut down, eliminated a lot of Nebraska's off-ball motions and off-ball offense, and forced guys to go create one-on-one, and they couldn't do it.
Yep. So that's enough about games that have already happened. We can wrap up with the next 2 games. Purdue, going to be a short little preview. We already previewed Purdue once. This time is going to be a much, much, much steeper hill to climb. Going into Mackey Arena on a Friday night. I don't know if Purdue's students will be back. They might be back. But anyway, Friday night at Mackey, that's going to be a juiced up atmosphere. And you're without Juwan Gary, and you're going up against the top 5 team on the road. That's going to be a steep, like I said, that's going to be a steep hill to climb. Purdue still has a giant. They still have a giant man. His name is Zach Edey, just in case you forgot. He's still probably the front runner for National Player of the Year. And then, like we said, the first time around, these freshman guards, they've had their ups and downs, especially since that game in Lincoln. Fletcher Lawyer, he's been up and down a little bit. And then Purdue does have the one blemish at home against Rutgers. Steve Peichel appears to have the Purdue blueprint, and he might be the only one this year. So that's my thoughts on Purdue.
Yeah, the two saving graces about things that stand out and that, allowed Nebraska to stay in it last time. They don't force turnovers, 354th in the country in opposing turnover percentage, and they are actually not a good three-point shooting team. They're at 32.2% now, which is 249th. So you got to hope that you can double team, fly around, and that they're not hitting. They tend to shoot better at home than away, but it's not a great three-point shooting team. So they're not going to be able to use the exact same game plan they did last week, especially without Juwan Gary, where they held Zach Edey to 11 points, season low. Lawyer had 22 in that one, but it took him 21 shots to get there. Hit some big shots in overtime once they got there, but they're going to if Nebraska scores 58 points in regulation in this one, then there won't be an overtime. So
no,
gonna have to find some way to attack that team defensively. What Edey had like 7 blocks in that game last time. So that's very, very tough task. It's gonna take an outlier performance from Nebraska to pull it off. And unfortunately, that will probably be the case for their next game as well.
Yes, Ohio State is the game after that. As we record this, so we can give you a little timestamp, they trail at home to Minnesota at the half, 37-35 at the Schottenstein Center out in Columbus. It is of note that Zed Key is hurt. He is not playing. He is still out. That's why Dawson Garcia has 12 points on 4 of 7 shooting. But Ohio State, they've got some pieces, and I don't think there is a bigger piece on Ohio State's team than 6'6" freshman Bryce Sensabaugh. My boy. Now is my time to talk about Bryce Sensabaugh. He is long as hell, and he loves taking that thing to the rim. There aren't many guys who can stay in front of him, and Bryce Sensabaugh's not afraid to try to go through you either. He's definitely got a build for the next level, and I really like watching this dude play. He was a late offer by Ohio State too. Even though he was the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year out of Lakeland Prep in Orlando, he was kind of a late offer by Chris Holtmann, but he is well worth the price of admission to watch him play basketball. I don't know what Key's status is, how long he's out. He's one of the better, big guys. He's an undersized big at 6'8", but I feel like he's been around forever. Felix Okpara, 6'11" freshman. He's got some stuff to him. I don't know where Chris Holtmann keeps finding these guys. He keeps finding like some somewhat unheralded dudes, and he gets the most out of them. The names you probably recognize are Zed Key and Justice Suing. I feel like they've been there since Holtmann got there, but that's just being around the Big Ten so much. But it all starts and goes through Sensabaugh, in my opinion.
Who is 14th in the country of percentage of his team's shots taken while he's on the floor. He's not going to be doing a whole lot of passing. He gets the ball. That thing's going up. Ahead of him are people like Darius McGee at Liberty, who's had like multiple 40-point games. Antoine Davis.
Jelly Walker at UAB.
Yep. Antoine Davis, who's got like 4,000 career points. Jelly Walker there at number 9. Devin Askew at California, former Wilhelm Breidenbach teammate. Who is on his third college and taking 35% of a very bad Cal team shots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Sensabaugh is a guy, and again, 6'6", beefy. He's the type of guy that you probably would have liked to have Juwan Gary match up with.
Yes, absolutely.
So if Gary's still out for that game, then could be a problem. But
yes.
You mentioned it's some of the names coming back. Suing missed like basically all last season, I believe. He's healthy now and playing a big role for them. And they, other than that, they hit the transfer portal and the recruiting ranks hard, where you got Isaac Likely from Oklahoma State that Nebraska fans may remember, Sean McNeil from West Virginia, shooter, and both those guys are playing key roles as starters. Bruce Thornton is another freshman that's playing a big role for them alongside Sensabaugh. So yeah, lot of new faces for that team in the rotation, but it is currently 10th in the country in KenPom, number 1 in offensive rating at 119, and 88th in defensive rating. So not an elite defensive team, but
KenPom also loves them. Are they still in the top 15 on KenPom?
They are number 10.
Holy moly! Yeah,
the 10-5 record.
Yeah, KenPom loves Ohio State. KenPom is a big KenPom lives in Wyoming, but he might be a Buckeye. The algorithm, big fan of Ohio State. So that game is on Wednesday. I said Tuesday earlier, so it's Wednesday at 6. Ohio State, they're playing right now against Minnesota at home, and then they go to Piscataway for a Sunday afternoon game at the Rack before coming to Lincoln. So
this is what we'll do. If Nebraska pulls off the win against Purdue, we will record sometime after that win. If that does not go well for the Huskers, we'll wait until after the Ohio State game and then record later on to get both those games in there and kind of react to both of those. So I think that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. That's enough of us talking about these two teams. Stay tuned to Hail Varsity for my coverage, and we've got all the football stuff going on now where the new assistants spoke. EJ Barthel and Evan Cooper talked to the media on Thursday, so you can read our stories coming out of that. You can again read all my coverage at hailvarsity.com. Follow Hail Varsity on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Jacob Bigelow _. Follow Bigelow at Jacob A Bigelow.
That's me.
Where you can find whatever he's got kind of in the works there.
If you want, if you can, we're the January issue of Huskers Illustrated is on its way. But if you want, you can go find the December issue. Shout out to my guy Brett Sapp for sending this over to me. You can go find the December issue with Derek Walker on the cover from the Creighton game. And I was the cover story in the month of December. My story on the Creighton game and the impact of Walker being back when he first got back. So if you want to go track down the December issue of Huskers Illustrated, you can find it at your local Husker Hounds, among other places. And if you want to remember Nebraska beating Creighton, you can add that to the collection. So that's my shameless plug. And like Jacob said, go check his stuff out too. Follow us on the socials, and if you're a loyal listener, leave us a review. It helps the show grow. We appreciate all you guys, and we will talk to you next week.